we might be able to get outside and enjoy some of this nice weather before the sun goes down. So, all right, well, we are going to get started. It is 7:01. Thank you all for being here. We should open in the traditional way. So we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, the Scout Oath and Law. And it's okay to sit down. We can do this sitting down when we're online. If you're already standing up, great, but no need to stand up. If you feel that you must stand up, you can't do the Pledge of Allegiance sitting down. That is just not something you do. And shut your camera off and stand up, then turn it back on after you sit back down. All right, here we go.
Salute. Those who are not, put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United
States of America,
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On my honor,
I will do my best to do my duty
to God and my country, obey the Scout law, help other people at all times,
be strong,
mentally awake, and morally straight.
A scout is
trustworthy, loyal,
helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient,
fearful,
thrifty,
brave,
clean, and reverent.
All right, Scout is reverent. And Mark, glad to see Blue was participating in the Pledge, Oath, and Law. Did he stand up when he heard the words? Awesome. All right, well, Scout is reverent, so please prepare yourself for prayer in the manner in which you are accustomed. Lord Father, we thank you for this beautiful weather. We thank you for the sunshine. We also thank you for the rain and the snow and the wind that you send to us to clean things out and water things, and remind us to appreciate the nice days. Father, we thank you for these men and women who've gathered here tonight, giving up their time and their talents and their treasures to invest into the future generation, because you said, whenever we do unto the least of these, we are doing it as unto you. So let our hands extended be a blessing to them and be a blessing to you, and continue to watch over this ministry. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about one of my favorite scouting topics. No, it's not the topic of my favorite point of the Scout Law, which if you ask any of my scouts what it was, they would tell you that it is the word obedient. I love that point of the Scout Law. But my favorite topic, my favorite activity in scouting is high adventure. And when I think of high adventure, I just remember watching the Indiana Jones movie when they're horseback out in Utah, and this is Arches. If you recognize the scenery, this is Arches National Park in Utah, and they're out there riding horses through the desert. I mean, what's more scouty than that? And so we're going to talk about high adventure. And by the way, this is being recorded. So if you signed up, whether you're here or not, you're going to get a copy of the recording and also the slide deck. So, but before we get into my favorite topic, we're going to talk about my other favorite topic, which is safety, our safety moment. So let's test your knowledge on these age-appropriate activities. So we have the activity will appear, and you can just type in the chat box what age and up, right? So if it's Scout and up, Weeblo and up, Lion and up, right? It's very few and down, right? It'll be and up. So let's take a look at this first one. Backpacking, overnight backpacking, backcountry. What do you think? In the chat box. Scout and up, 13 and up, Weeblo and up, Wolf and Bear and up, Tiger or Lion. Chat box, by the way, is at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a little speech bubble. All right. And if you're not able to do that, I'll tell you what, since there's only a few of us, let's just come off mute and holler it out. All right, let's just do it that way. What do you think? Backpacking overnight in the backcountry. What age and up can do that? All right, Mark says, we blowing up. We got a 13 and up.
Yeah, 13 and up.
Scouting up. All right. Survey says scouting up. Right. So you can be a scout and go backpacking in the backcountry. All right. Now, what you do have to be 13 and up for is certain high adventure, like film on it. There's some age requirements there. All right, let's take another one. How about a horseback trek? Get a bunch of scouts to go horseback riding. What do you think? Lion, tiger, wolf, bear, weeblo, scout, or 13? What do you think? Holler it out.
13.
13, weeblo, wolf, bear. All right, it is 13. Yeah. All right, I guess those horses bite. Okay, how about this? Climbing in a human-made facility. We don't know who actually made the facility, so maybe it's a human-made facility, indoor rock climbing or outdoor if it's a human-made facility. What do you think? Lion, tigers, wolf, bear, weeblo, scout, or 13 and up? What do you think? 13 and up? No guesses? Come on, scouting is about being brave. Scout is brave. Scouting up. All right, this was interesting. Actually, lions can do this, right? Now, this is a human-built facility. So you got to imagine that they've got all the padded floors and they got all the safety things. We're not going to go out to Alapoca State Park and just start climbing some rocks with lions and tigers. All right, how about canoeing, class 1 and 2 water? What do you think? Scout, lion, tigers, 13?
13 and up.
13 and up? All right.
Yeah.
So actually scouts can do that. So if you've got some tenderfoots and some first class, they can go. All right. Now this gets a little bit more gentle. Canoeing on gently flowing water. And yes, those are the actual words on the Guide to Safe Scouting. What do you think?
Scouting.
Scouting up?
Yeah.
Now this one changed recently. Or maybe not recently, but this one changed not too long ago. Because I remember I planned a Weeblo event. My troop planned a Weeblo event where we were going to take some scouts, some Weeblos canoeing, and I got yelled at because it was not age appropriate. But now it's available to all ages. The only difference is that if they're lions or tigers, they are passengers, right? So they're sitting in the middle. But yeah, wolf, bear, weeblo on gently flowing water. So I guess the Brandywine would count for that. The Nanacoke's probably okay. I don't know if the Nanacoke gets too many rapids in it. How about day hikes? Oh, tubing. I gave that away. So tubing is wolf and bears and up. This is actually the one that got me in trouble. So now, if it was done now, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble. All right, how about day hikes? We should all get this one. Everyone, yeah, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, everyone can do this one, right? All right, so that's our safety moment. So let's talk about this. So any unit, by the way, any scouting unit can have a high adventure program. It just has to be age appropriate, right? So why should we? Let's just come off mute. There's only a handful of us, so just come off mute and just holler it out. Why should we make high adventure part of our unit's annual program?
Because it's fun.
It's fun, right? It's fun. All right. Why else? Yeah, you get to go do some stuff, right? It's now typically, I don't know that there's any formal definition of what a high adventure is. To me, it's more than just a weekend. It's more than just a camp out. To me, now this is just me, to me, high adventure means we start one place, we end up another, right? And how we get there is can be different. So it's walking from one place to another as a backpacking trip, it's canoeing, it's kayaking, it's rafting, sailing, biking. That's my definition of a high adventure. Now there's others, right? So there's, if you go to Summit Bechtel Reserve, you spend the night in your camp tent every night. You don't move from one place to another, but you get up in the morning and you go and you do something exciting, right? So you get up in the morning and you go rock climbing, and then you get up the next morning and you go rafting, and you get up the next morning and you go somewhere else. So a few different definitions of high adventure, but to me, it's more than just a weekend camp out. It's something a little bit more, something that the scouts can really look forward to. All right. So what are some challenges? So if by that definition, it's more than just a weekend camp out, what are some challenges that we might have when putting together a high adventure?
Safety.
Okay. Yeah, tell us more about that, Alan. What sort of safety? 'Cause, safety is a challenge for a camp out, but why is it more of a challenge when a high adventure?
Well, high adventure is more dangerous.
Okay, all right. The more fun things are, the more dangerous they can
Yes.
be, right? Yeah. So we really got to have that discipline. We really got to make sure that's where that word obedient comes in, man. When the risk is high, the obedience really needs to step up. We need to really make sure that we're doing things the right way. All right, Chris, you said time and physicality. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, time, I mean, I'm Chris. I'm from first time logging on here for first time attendee, long
First time caller. All right, welcome.
First time and
Welcome
long
to the
time
show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here. Time, I mean, I remember just when I was growing up, my kids aren't quite old enough for high adventure, but it's a 10-day commitment, usually for like Philmont or another high adventure base that we have. But then so getting away from work, right? And then the training involved in it, it's a time commitment, and not everyone has that or wants to do that time commitment, which is too bad. That's the time part. And the physicality part of it is, if you've been out to Philmont and you go to Philmont from here, I went to Philmont from Oklahoma, where it's 500-foot elevation to 10,000 foot was almost 12,000 feet to the top of Mount Baldy. It's a physical effort, and I live on Kent Island, and I'm training to go to Spain right now, and I can't get more than 6-foot elevation gain. Right. I have to go to I have to go up into the Appalachians to do that. So that's and that's a time commitment in itself also, to go to do that, to prepare.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime, whether you're hiking or biking or canoeing and portaging or whatever it is, it's physically demanding. And so it's important that we choose an activity that our scouts can be challenged with, that they can push themselves, but not hurt themselves. All right, what are some other thoughts, some other challenges associated with a high adventure? This is the interactive part, by the way, just want to let you know.
I'll say funding. It can be pretty expensive.
Yeah, it can be expensive, right? Like I said, it's a little bit more than a weekend trip to Rodney or a weekend trip to the state park, where the total cost is going to be about, maybe $35-$40 a person, if that. Depending on where you go, it can be fairly reasonable. Some of the bike trips that I've done on the C&O Canal were fairly inexpensive. I've spoken to some other troops that have gone out hiking on glaciers out in Alaska. Now, I imagine that was pretty costly, airfare out to Alaska and the permits and the equipment and all the stuff that they had to have. I imagine that added up pretty quickly. So yeah, we got to manage our costs. All right. One other that can be a challenge is, like I said, it's more than just a camp out. So maybe it's, instead of a 2-night camp out, maybe it's a 3-night, maybe it's a 4-night, maybe it's a 10-day experience. And so the having scouts be away from home for that long can be an emotional challenge. And the fact that they don't have plumbing available, right? The fact that they don't have the ability to take a shower every morning, and the fact that they do have to get up and go every morning, that can be pretty emotionally challenging for some scouts and some adults, by the way. All right. Yeah, location, right? So oftentimes a high adventure is going to be at a different location. It's not going to be the state park where we go camping during the fall and the winter months. So, being able to travel, whether you fly or take the train or drive, it's going to have some cost to that. All right. So, but it's worth it though. I mean, it's one of those things that we got to put the effort in. The more reward, the more effort. So when we are thinking about it, so we decided we're going to do it. We've identified it. What are some factors that we need to consider when we're deciding what we're going to do and where we're going to do it? Oh, this is sea-based, by the way. What do you think?
What's the interest of what's the troop interested or the organization interested in?
Yeah,
What do they?
that's probably step one, right? What do we want to do? Do we want to go backpacking? Do we want to go canoeing? Do we want to go rock climbing, horseback riding? What do we want to do? Right, step one. Now that's probably the hardest step, right? To get a group of people of any age. I almost said group of youth, but a group of any age to decide on, because we might only get to do this once. I was growing up. I joined. I only got to go on one high adventure, and it was, so I had to choose, right? And so your scouts, you might say maybe your troop goes every year, but that scout might only get one chance to go. Maybe your troop can't afford to go every year and you're going every 2 or 3 years. Well, that scout might only get one chance to go. So finding that one spot where you can all agree on is going to be tough. Right, thanks. What else do we need to consider?
Weather versus where we're going and what the weather is, good or bad versus the time of year.
Yeah, and so it might be challenging to predict the weather specifically, but certainly the climate, right? What's the weather typically like in that time of year at this location? So this group that went to Alaska, I really hope they didn't go in February. I bet that was pretty rough. It would have been dark, right? Whereas, do we really want to go to the desert in July? It's probably going to be pretty hot. Or do we want to go to Mexico in July? It's going to be really, really hot. So thinking about that and what are the conditions going to be like? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. What else? How about the age and condition of the scouts and the leaders, right? Because you got to take some leaders with you, right? And so maybe you've got a group of 16, 17-year-old scouts that are in great shape and great condition, and they want to do 25 miles a day at Philmont, and you look around at the adult leaders that you got to take with you. That was one of the challenges I had when I went to Philmont. I had to get in shape. I had to work out and I had to lose a couple pounds. By the way, I found them back. I did lose the pounds. I found them again. No, not to worry. They were right where I left them in the fridge. But we got to be sure that we're not overextending our physical abilities, both for the scouts and the youth. So a couple things, that we consider, and you mentioned all this. What's the financial situation for your scouts? If you have 1 or 2 scouts that it's going to be a financial struggle, then ask, okay, what can we do to help them out? All right. Does our charter organization have a fund? Does your unit have a fund? Does the place that you're going have a campership policy? Can we split the costs up a little bit differently? Can those who have a little bit more, can they pay a little bit more? What kind of fundraisers can we do? Now, if all of your scouts are in that situation, it just makes it a little bit more challenging. Doesn't make it impossible, but you might need to plan a little bit further out ahead. You might need to put a little bit more effort into fundraising and look for ways to cut costs, right? So you don't have to fly to Philmont. You can drive, right? You can take the train. It's a little less expensive. There's a train station that pulls right in, not too far from Philmont, and you can get a bus from the train station in. So people do that. It's a little bit cheaper than flying. Also takes long. Physical condition, we talked about that. You know, if the people that want to go on this trip aren't in the best physical condition, then maybe Philmont 20 miles a day is not where you want to do. Maybe you want to do something that's a little bit, they do have shorter treks, right? They do have shorter treks in Philmont, but they're all pretty physically challenging. The elevation, as someone mentioned, elevation is different. You know, here in Delaware, we have an elevation of about 12 feet. As opposed to when you get out to Philmont, it's going to be probably closer to 10,000 feet. So the elevation's different. The air is thinner. What's the emotional mental status of the Scout? Are they going to be able to handle the difficulty because it's going to be hot, it's going to be cold, it's going to be wet, it's going to be dry, they're going to be thirsty, they're going to be hungry, their feet are going to hurt. And if you're out on a track and your feet start to hurt, you get a blister on your heel, guess what? You're walking the next 40 miles with a blister on your heel. That's just how it goes, right? You just gotta, there's no calling mom to come pick you up. So are they ready for that? Can they be prepared for that? And this is important. I remember when we were planning this trip, we had 3 scouts that wanted to go. And the third scout of the three scouts, one of them just didn't get along with the other 2. He was bossy, he was arrogant, he was pushy, he was you know, he just wasn't kind, courteous, cheerful, friendly. You know, a lot of those factors in the middle of the scout law, he missed those. And it got to a point where 2 of the scouts said, if he goes, we're not going. And we had to make a tough decision that we encouraged this scout to do something else. And so we you know, it was a tough choice. It was a very uncomfortable conversation with the scout's parents. But looking back, as hard as it was, I think it was the right decision. And this was another issue too. What's your commitment? You know, what's their willingness to prepare? If they think they're going to show up and you know, show up at the airport and head out to Philmont and have a good time, they're not. Right? We gotta do some preparation. We got to make sure that we're working together. We got to make sure, we got to check your equipment. We got to make sure that you have everything that you need physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared before you go. And sometimes they're not willing to do that. They just want to show up. It's not the right way. And their interests, right? If you're the only one in the troop that loves backpacking and everyone else wants to go to sea base, go to sea base, you know, right? Do what the Scout, this is a youth-driven organization, and it doesn't matter necessarily what you want to do. What do the Scouts want to do within reason? And you know what? If you don't like boats, then don't go. You can still help. You can still help organize. You can still help get everything together. And you can even fly to Florida with them or drive to Florida with them. And while they're out on the boat, you can hang out on the beach, right? But it's the interest of the Scouts, not ours. All right. So preparation. Let's talk about preparation. What are some things we need? This is sea base. I'm sorry. This is Northern Tier, by the way. What do we need to do to prepare? I said one of the components is willingness to prepare. What do we got to do?
What equipment do we need?
All right. Okay. And by the way, those big Eureka tents that you take down to Rodney on the weekends might not be the best for backpacking. They're a little heavy, right? And you know, so maybe we need to invest in some lightweight backpacking tents, and maybe we need to invest in some backpacking stoves. The Coleman's stoves are not going to cut it. Maybe the Scouts need to buy some boots and some rain gear that's going to be lightweight. So absolutely, patrol gear, crew gear, and personal gear. All right, Chris. Yeah, man, we gotta get into shape, right? Whatever it is, you know. And the when I went the first time, there was another unit from Salisbury that was going, and they were doing the ultimate Philmont trek. I don't know what it was, but they kind of rank them in how many miles it is and how strenuous it is. And they weren't looking at anything other than the top 3 or 4. They were just going to, and man, you want to talk about a training regimen. They met every Saturday for about a year before they left, and they went running. So that was extreme. Now we didn't have that that extreme, but we did do a couple, shakedowns and things like that. All right. What else? What else do we need to? Oh, we got the equipment. We got some physical fitness.
Practice with your gear that you're going to use before you go.
Right. Don't just buy it. Right. Buy it and put it in your backpack and hope it works. Yeah, we want to practice with it. Some of those stoves are kind of hard to get lit if you don't know what you're doing. Setting up that tent that first night, setting up the tent in the wind and the rain and the dark, if you've never done it before, just make sure you're familiar with it. The water filtration systems or the whatever you're using to clean your water, make sure it works. All right, what else? Here's a couple more things that I'd recommend. Well, I guess I didn't do a slide on that. A couple of things I recommend is get your crew to spend time together. And yeah, you're going to do some shakedown hikes. You're going to do a couple backpacking trips or a canoe trip or, whatever it is that you're doing. If you're going horseback riding, you're going to take them and get them on a horse and make sure they know how to do that. But get them spending some time together, building the relationships. They're going to be counting on each other. When they get out there and it's just them, by the way, as the adults, our job at a high adventure, our job is to stay off to the side. And that's really hard to do. So they need to trust each other. They need to work together. They need to be able to figure things out. And yes, they're going to have their rough patches in the beginning, but it's a lot easier to smooth out those rough patches before you're out in the wilderness, right? So have them spend some time together. Have a bowling night, right? Have them get together and do something that is maybe unrelated to preparing for the trip, just so they can have some time to talk to each other, get to know each other, build that trust, build those relationships. All right. So when we talk about high adventure, there's a couple different ways that we can put together high adventure. One is the BSA has some high adventure bases. So over here in New Mexico, what's that one called? All right. One more time, Alan, without the mute button.
Philmont.
Whoops, I went the wrong way. All right, well, I went backwards. Philmont, right? And how about up here, Northern Tier? So, by the way, what do we do in Philmont? Who's been there? Anybody been there? All right, I've been there.
I've been there.
Okay,
Yes.
who's that?
A lot of backpacking, a lot of walking.
A lot of walking, a lot of backpacking.
Yeah, but also, events you get the history, the heritage, the tooth of time. You get they have the horseback riding, mountain climbing, you name it, you can do it if you plan it in your trip.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff to do. And when you choose your trek, some of the things that you can do is, so you choose your trek, and the first thing you want to choose is how many miles do you think you can handle? Do you want an easy, well, I don't think any of them are labeled as easy, but it's moderate, difficult, strenuous, and make sure your will is written, something like that. I think those are the 4 levels, right? So step 1 is establish, where your how much you want to push yourself. So they're going to factor in how many miles it is total. Now, all of them are 50 miles or more, but they'll also establish, elevation changes and, how rugged the climbs are and stuff like that. Now, within that base, there are different camps that you can spend a night in that will have activities. So one of our scouts' favorite camps was they were built when we were there. They were building a railroad. So they had found some old rails that were just kind of they they had the rail had been pulled up and they just dumped everything. So they found these rails from the 1800s. They pulled them out, and so the activity was building a railroad, right, and putting it in place. Now it's done, right? So that railroad is done, and the activity there now is when you get to about a mile away from the camp, there's a telegraph, and you can send a telegram or a telegraph a mile up the tracks to the office, and I guess they tell you how to do it. And they come out on one of those push carts, one of those up and down push carts. And then they put all your backpacks on the push cart, and they take your backpack to the final mile. So it doesn't really save you a whole lot of but you still got to walk but that's kind of cool, right? And while you're there, they have a blacksmith shop, and you can, make nails and get in there and bang on stuff. There's horseback riding. There is one trek where you can have a donkey, and basically the donkey the donkey doesn't carry a whole lot. I think you can give him like your water bottle and your hat. You can give him like 1 pound out of your backpack and put it on the back of this mule or this burro. Sorry, it's actually a donkey. And you own a donkey for 24 hours, right? So that's kind of cool. And you got to walk him along, and you got to feed him, and you got to take care and water him. And there's rock climbing and mountain and pole climbing and all sorts of stuff. Now the challenge is you got to get to the camp in time, right? So if you're walking a little bit slow and you get to camp after dark, you don't get to do the activity in that camp. So there's a lot of cool stuff to do. All right, now that's the only one I've been to. Actually, I've been to Summit. So who else has been to Summit? Rachel's been there. Alan's been there. What are some things you can do at Summit, Alan?
Yeah, the zip line.
Okay, yeah, a lot of zip lines, big zip lines, right? Big long zip lines. What else?
They have pistol shooting.
They do have pistol shooting, right? So they got rifle, shotgun, and pistol, and different kinds of pistols. So they got the old revolvers, and they got the automatics, and pretty cool stuff. What else? What else can you do there?
They have rock climbing.
They have they have rock climbing. They do have whitewater rafting on the New River, not far. So you actually have to leave campus, but that's part of one of the trips that they will take you and drop you off and come pick you up. They have a skate park, right? So skateboards and roller skating and things like that. They have the Polaris ATVs that you can do. They have a BMX track. They have a BMX route that you start at the top and you go to the bottom. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, and this is the place where you set up camp, and that's your camp for the time you're there. So it's not like some of the other places where you're getting up, packing up, putting everything in your backpack and going. It's more like a summer camp where you stay in one spot, and then you go and you do your activities during the day. All right, how about Northern Tier? Has anyone been to Northern Tier?
I have, but I went in the winter.
You went in the winter. All right, well, tell us about that.
So yeah, it was a great experience. The first place I ever saw an 18-wheeler drive across a lake, which was pretty interesting. It's cold, frozen, snowed over, but they teach you the cold weather techniques. You get so everything there. You get issued. You get we didn't have to really bring anything with us except our warm weather clothes because it's so cold there. But you go out for, I think we went out for a week. We learned how to do snow caves and safely cross frozen bodies of water, build the snow caves, how to do hot tinting, and pull sleds or pulks as they're called with all of your gear, because when it's cold weather you can't really just put everything in your backpack. And it was a great experience. I was never cold, and and
really?
that's I was never cold, even though it never got above probably 5 degrees, because they give you, again, the stuff to be warm
Mm.
and to train you. Like, I think they did give us like mucklucks and stuff like this. Again, this is 30 years ago.
Oh my goodness, wow.
But it was just a great experience. It's something you don't, unless you're in Alaska in that northern area, something you don't experience or think about. But it was fun.
Sounds like a very interesting experience.
Yeah, no mosquitoes. So
no mosquitoes when it's 5 degrees. Yeah, that's the good news. No and no snakes. No snakes, no mosquitoes when it's 5 degrees.
Yes.
Now they are also open in the summertime, and they're known for their canoeing activities. And you're up there on the boundary waters between Minnesota and Canada, and in this, I believe you go with a guide. I think they still leave a guide with you the entire time, but you can canoe across lakes from one spot to another. And there is some portaging involved from what I understand, but very peaceful from what I understand. Again, I've never been there. Always wanted to go. Maybe I'll still get a chance. How about Sea Base? Who's been to Sea Base? All right, Alan, man, you've done a lot, Alan. Tell us about Sea Base.
I went down for leadership training for.
Okay. All right. Now, so that's pretty cool. If you, a lot of these bases, I know Philmont has some leadership training weeks and things like that. So, you do have an opportunity to go. I've never done Sea Base myself, but what I understand is there's a lot of different boating activities that you can do. They have a couple big sailboats, and they have some other vessels that you can take out. And so if you love the water, and if you love fishing, and you love being out on the sea, then that's a great place to go. So now the nice things about these camps is, as I think it was Bill mentioned, they can provide a lot of the equipment for you. He mentioned Northern Tier. All we had to bring was our clothes, right? Now, when I went to Philmont, we brought our own stuff, but they also had stuff, right? So if you don't own backpacking tents, they have backpacking tents, and they have stoves, and they have fuel, and they have, pretty much all the crew gear that you would need, and they loan it to you. Now, you have to trust that it's going to be in good working order when you get there, but I think for the most part, it typically is. So that's one of the benefits. The other benefit is you don't have to plan the route, right? The routes are pre-planned, they're pre-established. You just got to pick which one you want to do. Now with Philmont, at least, there's a lottery. So the lottery opens up, you put in your top 3. I want Trek 32, 34, or 26. And that's the order I want. And if 32 is available, you get it. If 32 is not available, then they give you the next one. If that one's not available, then they give you the next one. So the 2 times that I scheduled to go, I got my first choice on both of them, which was pretty cool. But there's not a bad trek out there, right? But you don't have to plan it. You don't have to figure out where your food stops are going to be. You don't have to figure out where you're going to get picked up and dropped off and all that kind of stuff. They kind of take care of all that for you. All right. Now, the other option, I would say that the downside of those bases is you got to do what they have set up, right? So there's not a ton of flexibility, right? There's options, but if you choose option A, by the way, if you choose a trek and you say you're going to be at this camp on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night, if you're not in that camp, they're sending out a search party for you, right? So there's no varying from your trek. Once you sign up for a trek, and you say you're going to be at this certain camp on Tuesday night, you better be there, or they're gonna come looking for you. And if you just decided that you wanted to go off track, they're not going to take too kindly to that, right? Now, the good news is, if something happens, someone gets hurt, right, and they know that you're stayed Monday night at this camp and you're supposed to be Tuesday night, and they know that you're somewhere along that trail, they will find you. So if someone gets hurt, you just sit still, and someone will find you. There's probably also another crew about 3 miles behind you that's going to come up to you as well. So that's a nice thing, is you're out in the wilderness, but you're not alone in the wilderness. Now, if we wanted to do something that's a little less expensive, we can plan our own. So I know I've done a lot of backpacking trips on the Appalachian Trail. That's something that's nearby to us. I've done the C&O Canal biking trip. I think I've done that 4 times, twice as a youth and twice as an adult. And I still love it. I still want to do it one more time. And then we've probably, I've done the Delaware River, paddling the Delaware River, and that's fun. What do you think are some advantages to just planning your own trip?
Lower cost, lower overhead. You can keep a
Yeah.
local.
Yeah, you can usually get there. You can usually drive there, depending on what you want to do. Yeah, thanks. What else? What else might be an advantage?
It can be customized to exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, if you want to do 20 miles a day, you can do 20 miles a day. If you want to do 5 miles a day, you can do 5 miles a day. If you want to go for 10 days, you can go for 10 days. You want to go for 4 days, you can go for 4 days. If you want to stop halfway through and visit a national battlefield site, you can do that if you want to, right? So you can kind of make it up, and you can kind of, now the downside of that is you have to do all that, right? You have to put in all that work. You have to figure out, okay, where's the drop-off point, and where can I pick up, and where can we get food, and where can we restock, and things like that. So it does require a little bit more preparation and planning. Now, and there you go. So unlimited options, more cost effective, can be more. Now, like this troop that went to Canada, to Alaska, I would imagine that was pretty pricey, right? So, but it does give you the greater freedom and flexibility. So before you go, a couple things. Conduct a few shakedown events before you go, whatever the activity is. If it's hiking, schedule a couple weekend hiking trips. If it's horseback riding, at least get them on a horse, right? Make sure they're not afraid of horses before you take them. By the way, if you're going on if you're doing a biking trip, make sure they know how to ride a bike. Don't take their word for it. I'm embarrassed to say, I learned this the hard way. Make sure you see them get on a bike and pedal it forward, right, before you take them on a 7-day biking trip. And you might want to check their equipment, right? So, inspect their bike, make sure it's in good working order, make them take it to a mechanic and get it checked out. Make sure they know how to change a tire, make sure they know how to, fix a flat or whatever it is. So, whatever the equipment is, make sure that that they know how to operate it and take care of it. Now, if you're doing your own, if possible, I'd recommend that you pre-hike it or pre-trip it at least a little bit, maybe just know the first day or two, so that you're not learning where to go as they are, right? So if you're going on a 7-day canoe trip, I don't think you have to do the entire 7 days, but you might want to do the first day, maybe 2 days, so that at least you're comfortable. Where do we drop off the cars at the pickup spot? Where do we drop off the cars at the launch spot? Where are we going to sleep the first night? Where are we going to eat lunch? Just kind of have that in your mind. It just makes the first 2 days are stressful. So if you've got those worked out, that can save you a lot of stress. All right. So have at least 2 people complete wilderness first aid. They do not need to be adults. Matter of fact, I'd recommend that it be 1 adult minimum and 1 youth minimum. Oftentimes when we need wilderness first aid, it's because the adult went down, right? It's the adult tripped, broke a leg, twisted an ankle, or is having some sort of a medical condition. And if it's the adult that knows the first aid, you're in trouble. So having a youth go through the wilderness first aid training is really, really important. And by the way, this wilderness first aid training is a little bit more involved than your typical Red Cross first aid. It goes into a little bit more detail. I found it very interesting when I went through it, and it changed the way I packed for backpack. Even when I'm going by myself, when I'm just going backpacking, not with scouts, I'm just going by myself. There's things I carry today that I would not have carried before I took the wilderness first aid training. We talked about this, do some team building activities, make sure that they're going to be working together, right? Make sure that they've got those relationships, that trust built. And someone said that, practice on your equipment. I think that was, maybe Bill said that, practice on your equipment, make sure you know how to light that stove, but also practice your skills. When we get out to, if we're backpacking, we might need to throw up some bear ropes, right? We might need to put some bear bags up in the trees. That's not as easy as it looks sometimes, right? Throwing that rope up and getting it over the branch and, and bringing them together, that's not as easy as it looks. So make sure that we know our bear safety protocols and things like that. All right. And here's the big, don't be too ambitious, right? Don't plan a trip that is more than you can handle. It's the key. Push yourself, don't hurt yourself. So if you are planning a 50 miler on the Appalachian Trail, and after you do a couple shakedown hikes, you realize that 10 miles a day is not going to cut it, then change your plan, right? Change your plan to something that they can do. So maybe cut it back to instead of 50 miles, maybe it's 30 miles, or maybe you can stretch it out over a couple more days, right? Because doing 10 miles a day on the Appalachian Trail, that's no joke, right? It depending on what part of the trail you're on, it can be pretty hilly, some elevation changes, very rocky. So you don't want to be, Wednesday and all of a sudden you got half your crew is crying and wanting to go home. All right. So here's a few resources. We're going to send these slides out. So we put these resources out there. And what I'd recommend is if you have a small unit, and by the way, Cub Scouts can do things too. And I highly recommend that you do something with Cub Scouts, not a 7-day backpacking trip, but maybe it's instead of a weekend camp out, maybe it's a 3-day camp out. And we probably don't want them backpacking from one spot to another. So maybe they stay in the same spot, but maybe, they get up one day and they go hiking, and they get up the next day and they go canoeing or tubing or whatever. And the next day that you get up and you take them to a professional artificial rock wall. So they're actually doing things every day that's exciting. So we'll send this slide out so you have all these resources. I'd recommend that, and I know this is happening already, and I'm just encourage it to continue happening, that if you've got 2 or 3 scouts that want to do something and you've got a leader, that's probably not enough. Reach out to the other units in your area and say, hey, and by the way, with this, they don't necessarily have to be right down the street. It's, for the planning purposes, and you can do the planning purposes over Zoom. The shakedowns, you're going to have to drive somewhere anyway. So you don't have to be even in the same town or the same county to partner up with a unit. They can be, anywhere, I'd say within a couple hours drive, and partner up. You've got 3 scouts, they've got 3 scouts, you've got 1 adult, they've got 2 adults, you've got a trailer, they've got backpacking stoves, right? Share your resources and put together a trip, and you'll get to go somewhere that you couldn't go without the partnership, and 2, you'll make some really good friends. When we went to Philmont the first time, we partnered up with a troop, and our scouts remained friends with those scouts, and our adults remained friends with their adults, and stayed in contact for quite some time. So it's a great way to build some relationships, make some friends, and get to go to some really cool places. All right, well, that's all I have. We're gonna wrap up. Any final thoughts, comments, questions?
At the Commissioners College this past March, someone had mentioned something about a powder horn that, and I looked it up, and it's it's like a wood badge for adults. It helps with it helps you prepare for high adventures, and
Okay.
it's just a weekend, and the closest place that has powder horn is the Capital Area Council,
Okay.
who puts it out.
All
So
right.
I just wanted to mention that.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I'll add that to the slide. When we send it out. Yeah, Capital Area Council's got a robust training program. They are doing training all the time. All right. Thanks, Mark. What else?
Yep.
Blue, have anything?
No, he's just snoring right now.
He's snoring right now. Okay. Typical Scoutmaster.
Right. Oh, you heard his name.
Rachel, anything?
No, I don't have anything to add right now.
All right. Well, appreciate it. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to give you 8 minutes of your life back. I'm sure you will use it wisely. And thank you again for being here tonight. We will see you again next month, May, third Wednesday in May. So we get together third Wednesday of every month with the exception of July and December. So look forward to seeing you then. Thanks. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
All right, perfect.
All right. You want to stop the recording?